Hey guys, John here. Welcome back to the course, How to Use Hive 2. This is video 8, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the other filters we didn't talk about in the last video, and those are going to be the comb, dissonant, reverb, and sideband. So this video is going to be fun because we're going to do a little bit of the theoretical kind of knowledge stuff of it, but we're actually also going to apply that into real patches to kind of see how these filters work. So let's go to a new preset here, and for the first one that we're going to talk about is going to be the comb filter. So go ahead and select comb, and the first thing that you're going to notice, right, is this doesn't really look like the filters anymore, but we have 3 different sliders. So basically, depending on the filter that we have, whether it's the comb, the dissonant, reverb, or the sideband, these sliders here are going to change kind of a little bit the functionality of the filters. So with that being said, the manual calls the comb, in this basic comb filter model, ratios from 0 to 50, which is the center column right over here, fade in a second delay tap, while values above 50 lengthen both delay times, thus lowering the pitch. So that's cool and all, but how do we actually make a cool sound out of this? So let's go to an init preset again, and for this example, let's change the sawtooth to pink noise, and let's go to the low pass 24 and select comb. So we have something kind of like this. So you might be thinking, okay, we just have pink noise, and I think the filter's working. So something that we do have to keep in mind is a lot of the knobs that work kind of in tandem with this filter here are obviously these 3 here, but also the cutoff, resonance, and the key follow. So basically, let's try to make almost like an ARP kind of plucky harp kind of sound. And with comb filtering, you can do a lot of that cool stuff. So for example, something that I would like to do is get just a little quick pulse of this pink noise into this filter. And a way we can do that is maybe use this mod envelope here and kind of drag this over on the volume, turn our volume all the way down, and then turn the knob here all the way up, so we have full modulation here. And then let's bring down the sustain and the release, and then just get a little bit of decay. Something kind of like that. So we have just a little kind of impulse of pink noise. So what we need to do now is kind of reduce our cutoff and increase our resonance, and hit a note. And for our amp envelope, what we can also do as well is increase our release time. Maybe reduce our sustain. So now we're hitting notes, right? But they all sound the same. And this is where the key follow kind of comes in here. So we want to turn this all the way to the right to 100, so our different notes are going to follow the pitch. So we already kind of almost have like a string kind of sound. What we can do as well from here is also increase the dampening just a little bit. Now, something that we also do need to keep in mind is playing around with comb filtering, you do have to tune these sometimes, and an easy way to do this in Hive is let's use the second oscillator and filter here. So let's route the second oscillator to the second filter here. So we have something like this, and let's increase the octave by 1. So we can hear that these are dissonant, they're not really in tune. And this is where the cutoff kind of comes in handy, and this is kind of how you have to tune this by ear. Okay, so that sounds a little bit more in tune, and sometimes you have to fine tune every single patch. It kind of just depends on what you're making. But for now, that seems okay. So let's take out the oscillator here. So we have something kind of like this. So let's make this a little bit more plucky. Let's kind of reduce our sustain almost entirely on this first amp. So you have something like that, and kind of play around with our ratio and kind of see how this changes things. Okay, that might be kind of okay for now. So what we can do in this stage right here is maybe also apply some different modulation. So maybe on this dampening right here, we can drag this mod 1 and put this on the dampening and kind of increase a good amount of depth here. Something kind of like this would be okay. So now we can get into effects, and this is going to be kind of cool. So we can maybe give it a little bit of distortion, some extra harmonics, and let's go ahead and compress this a little bit and get some more volume out of this. Some reverb. And then maybe also as well get some delays, put this above the reverb and turn this on here. Okay, so we have a cool kind of sound going on here. So now what we can do is route this whole output to the second filter. So let's turn this volume all the way down, and let's select filter 1 on filter 2. So now we're getting basically the same thing. And what we did to this first amp we kind of like, so we can click this envelope, hit copy, or this down arrow, and go to paste. So we have the same settings here for the second amp. And now we can kind of sculpt it further. So let's kind of bring our cutoff back, increase some resonance, and give it some mod envelope for number 2. So let's bring our sustain down. So we have something kind of like that. And for our delays, let's maybe bring the mix down a little bit and kind of increase some of the low pass. And then now we can go to the ARP and turn this on, something like this. Add some drums. And from here, it's kind of just sculpting different kind of sounds like that. So that's kind of one little aspect of that right there. We can go back to a new preset and kind of do the same thing with different types of these filters, because the comb, the dissonant, and the reverb are kind of similar in a certain way, and they kind of function in a similar fashion. So let's go back to pink noise here, and let's send this to the dissonant. So this one's kind of fun too, because you can get some really weird, really strange ambient sounds here. So we have this in the dissonant as well. Kind of increase some resonance to taste. And you can do a lot of interesting sound effects with these as well. And keep in mind, it's kind of nice as well to add some extra unison. So add 2 voices of unison to the pink noise and change the sound a little bit. And we can do the same thing as well, turn our volume all the way down and just give it a little bit of burst of a pulse here. So turn this all the way up, or sustain down, release down, and get a little bit of this decay here. So here we almost get like a dissonant kind of metallic-y sound as well. You can make some interesting, almost like a hang drum kind of sound. But again, with these kind of sounds, we do have to tune these. And again, we can go to the second oscillator and filter and kind of tune them that way. And then we also have the reverb, which is kind of like, so the reverb definition from the manual, they basically say a variant of the comb with longer delays capable of emulating resonant bodies and ambient spaces, which is very true. So in this case, the ratio adjusts the diffusion. So if we did something kind of like this here. And maybe just left the volume kind of up here. So that's kind of some ambient stuff you can do, and you can add some chorus to kind of give it a little bit more stereo kind of vibe. Let's go to ensemble, increase the wet, increase a little bit of the depth here, and then reduce the rate. So we have this kind of cool sound here. So let's go to the amp 1, copy this over here, and go to the second amp envelope and go to paste. And then let's go to filter 1 and reduce this volume. So we have the same thing, but we're also going to the second filter here. And this is kind of cool where you can kind of customize this sound with another filter. So if we have our cutoff down, some nice resonance. We can then modulate this cutoff with an LFO, and we have our LFO knob here. So let's kind of go ahead and do that. And then maybe slow this guy down to maybe 1 second, something like that. And then slow down maybe a little bit more from here. And change from gauge to sync. So hopefully you kind of get the idea of what these kind of filters can do. It's a lot of fun. They are a little bit tricky to kind of get your get the feeling right, because it's a little bit different workflow than just, you putting a low pass on something and modulating the cutoff like we just did here. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to mess around with it. I definitely recommend to spend some time with them. So the first three, this comb, dissonant, and reverb, are kind of similar in that certain sense. And also keep in mind that changing the synth engine will change the sound as well. So take a listen to this. So we're on normal, clean, and then dirty. You almost get that nice, almost distorted kind of sound on the dirty one. And keep in mind, you can also send this second oscillator down to the reverb filter here by clicking here. And make weird sounds here. And if we switch over here to the dissonant, so if you're into making kind of ambient textures, these are the go-to filters to use this in Hive. So the last one that we do need to talk about is the sideband, because this one's really, really cool. So let's go to a new preset, and for this one, let's send a sine wave through it, which is going to be kind of cool here. So if you want to make kind of metallic-y bell kind of sounds, this is a cool way to do it. So let's select sideband here, and for our mix, let's go all the way up here, and kind of just play some notes here, and bring the cutoff down. And let's change our transpose maybe to something like plus 24, something down over here. Okay, so we have some kind of a timbre like this here. Now let's reduce our sustain and our decay a little bit here. So we're almost kind of getting that bell sound here. So this is a nice little texture right there. So let's go ahead and work with this one here. Let's go to our effects, and let's compress this thing a little bit first. Give it some reverb. And some delay. So we have something kind of cool like this here. Give it some low pass, a little high pass just in case. Diffuse this. And maybe reduce the mix here. And now we can go to an ARP here, and we have kind of like a bell ARP. And then as before, if we kind of want to shape the sound a little bit more, we can reduce our volume here, select filter 1, and now we can kind of do the same thing. So let's copy the first amp and then paste this on the second one, and bring this down a little bit here like this, and give us a mod envelope. So we kind of clean up the top end a little bit. So So basically what the sideband's doing is it's basically shifting by 100 hertz instead of a factor. So basically the manual says not based on delay lines, but it's a special kind of amplitude modulation, essentially a frequency shifter. And this ratio over here will change that phase here. So we can kind of hit some notes, and we don't really hear what it's doing until we modulate something like this. So let's put an LFO on this thing, and then let's kind of listen to that. Let's turn our ARP off here, and then maybe give it some sustain. So we're basically doing some frequency or some phase modulation here. Which can give you some interesting tonality as well. So let's say we remove this here. So let's double click this here and maybe use this mod envelope over here and kind of put this on the ratio and bring this down and give it a good healthy amount. And let's try that out with the ARP. And there's a lot of different textures between the cutoff and the resonance as well. And something to keep in mind as well, so let's take off this ARP real quick here. So we have the key follow for this one as well, right? So we're playing different notes here. So maybe we like this kind of texture, but different notes kind of won't really have that. So in this case, sometimes you want to do a little bit of key follow. That kind of helps keep it a little bit more consistent. And then some other still cool stuff we can do. Let's go back to an init preset and let's send a sawtooth or something like this through this sideband here and see how that sounds here. So you can make some really strange sounds like that. Put some nice effects on that here. So that might even be kind of cool for an ARP as well. And we can do the same thing, turn down the volume, send it to filter 1, and then give it some mod envelope, something like that, and make sure to copy this same envelope and paste this over here. So yeah, that's kind of the filters a little bit in a nutshell. It's definitely recommended to spend time with them because you're going to find a lot of different options. And especially kind of keep in mind as well that, so we're doing a sideband here, or let's say we do like a comb filter on this first one, we can send this one to a reverb one and make even some crazier sounds that way. So there's a lot of possibilities to make some really cool sounds. So that's why I kind of wanted to save this video for its own kind of thing. So we can kind of go into the theory of it, and that's cool and all, but unless you actually spend some time and actually make some cool stuff with it, that's kind of where you're going to learn to make it a little bit more. So keep in mind the comb, resin, or dissonant and reverb are kind of similar in that sense of the comb type of filtering there. And it's always nice to put a burst of pink noise or maybe some white noise into the three here, the comb, dissonant, and reverb, and kind of just experiment with the cutoff. But if you wanted to sustain, make sure to keep that resonance up when you're using some of those. So yeah, thank you so much for thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions on any of these filters, please let me know. They can be a little bit confusing, and I totally get that. So yeah, hopefully you learned something, and we'll see you in the next video.